Good evening, everybody. It's day 7 of the 10-day program, and we're going to do a little back to school. This is our summer 2021 program, and I call it my back to school for patients. So just a little bit so you see me real quick. Hey, I'm here. I'd like to call this a back to school for patients because we are getting ready for all the kids to go back to school. And there's some things I want to teach you. And I know sometimes I teach these over and over again, but for me, it's super important for you to understand that I know that you don't know as much as I know, maybe you do, but sometimes it's confusing. So I find that repetition is probably the key. So I'm going to make myself go away here and let's get rocking and rolling. All right, so welcome to, this is technically day 7. Or sometimes day 6 for some of you that may have started on Tuesday. I know some of you have done this before. Back to school for patients. So we're going to review the supplements. We'll review the foods on the program. We're going to talk about macros because I know that's so confusing, and then why to do a low carbohydrate or high fat and high fat diet, which is what we call kind of a ketogenic diet. So let's talk about our supplements. So if you're on the blood sugar program, you will have your Veggie Pro shake, most likely. And that's 4 scoops per shake, and you can have up to 3 a day. If you don't want to have 3 a day, that's fine. I usually do 1 to 2 shakes a day, and I'll just double up my scoops. I make it bigger, or make it a little bit more protein in it. That way you have all of that. And the SP Cleanse then is the 5 capsules 3 times a day, the Diaplex 5 capsules 3 times a day also, and the Gymnema 2 tablets in the morning, 1 at lunch, 1 at dinner. But we were discussing earlier that if you're having some sugar cravings, and especially in that mid-afternoon to dinner time, you might think about doubling up your tablets for lunch and dinner. Just do 2 at lunch instead of 1 and 1. And that way you'll be doing 2 at breakfast and 2 at lunch. That may get it in your system a little bit quicker. And you may have a harder core sugar problem than you realize. Inflammation, so your program supplement schedule stays the same. You're going to be doing your Veggie Pro chocolate or vanilla shakes, your SP Cleanse, that's 5 capsules 3 times a day, your Boswellia complex, which is for your inflammation, 1 tablet 3 times a day, and Cyruta Plus, which is 3 tablets 3 times a day, and the black currant seed oil, 2 pearls 3 times a day. The food doesn't change. Page 15 gives you your vegetables, and if you can't find something to eat, we have a problem. Your target is 13 to 15 servings per day. Remember, these are nutrition-rich and fiber-dense foods, so they'll fill you up. The good fiber in there helps to feed your good bacteria as well. Starchy vegetables, we're limiting those to half a cup or limiting it to 1 serving per day, because when we think of a starchy vegetable, we're thinking of something a little higher in carbohydrate. So a lot of you are on a weight management program as well. So we want to be mindful of that as we do that. Now, after the program, you can add a little bit more in. If you're still continuing your weight management, we'll talk about that on Wednesday. On page 16, your fruits, your serving size is half a cup to 3/4 of a cup. And I want you to use it only in your shakes. We'll be talking about blueberries at the end. Hugh of the King Grove Farms contacted me, and I did stop by and pick up mine already. Took some to my mom and my sister. And so the blueberries, they have them frozen, whatever's last. He said, do you mind if I do another blueberry truck at your office in Winter Park? And he said, that's the only one I'm going to do. And whatever's there is gone, and whatever's gone is gone. So I am guilty of buying 50 pounds of blueberries. Don't be a hater. So use those in your shakes, and I'll show you another way you can have them at the end. Your protein should be serving size is 3 ounces, 2 to 3 servings per day. You know, about the size of the palm of your hand is that it's about 25 grams of protein in there. So that's kind of what I use it as a measuring force there. Serving size, 2 teaspoons or 3 to 4 servings per day. Those are your extra oils that you're going to be adding in. And your beverages, remember I said you could have coffee. You can have a green tea, as long as you don't put all your crappy stuff in there. If you want to use organic whipping cream in your coffee, or do some MCT oil, and you're using stevia or monk fruit or truvia to sweeten your coffee, I'm good with that. After the 10 days, you can put anything in there that you want. So the vegetables stay the same. You can eat them raw. You can steam them. You can roast them. I remember you're going to stay away from white potatoes and corn. Those aren't on your menu plan anyway. Your fruits and servings, let's limit it to your berries because they're a little lower in the glycemic index. No fruit juices, as you know. Orange juice has, a ton of sugar in it. So we don't really want to do that. It's different than eating the orange. Your plant-based proteins, your Veggie Pro and your vanilla Veggie Pro, chocolate vanilla, are both plant-based protein. So you can have both animal and plant-based. I lately have been doing about 80% plant-based and a little bit of animal-based protein. I find it feels better when I go out and ride. So something like that would be something to play with. No processed meats or sausages or canned meats or cold cuts and frankfurters. And I can tell you stories about frankfurters if you really want to know. I'll ruin everything for you about a frankfurter. Canned fish and seafood are acceptable. Make sure the cans are BPA free. I don't really talk about BPA during this class, but it's bisphenol A, and it's an endocrine disruptor. So we want to kind of keep those out of our foods. We are doing a little bit of a detox here. And eat your fatty fish with low risk of mercury, so your deep sea, not your farm varieties. And broil, bake, roast, or poach are your best cooking options. So you're limiting, I'm going to say you're not going to be doing any dairy. If you're going to do organic whipping cream, truly that's just fat. There's no lactose in that. You can have your nut milk. So I'm happy with, for you to use any of the nut milks. You don't have to limit it to coconut or hemp. You can have any cashew, whatever nut you're not allergic to milk, you can have it as long as it doesn't have added sugar. Avoid your sodas, your diet sodas, your energy drinks, your sport drinks, alcohol. I'm letting you have coffee. And I'm letting you have non-herbal teas, but no caffeinated drinks. I would stay away from that because it gets a little bit. We're playing around with too many chemicals at that point. But you can certainly have, Perrier. We found Perrier with a cucumber. It's very refreshing for the summertime. So you're welcome to have things like that, or seltzer water, and put your own, squeeze a lemon in it, whatever feels good for you, or put your own cucumber in it. So look for the BPA-free packaging. If you have a food allergy, don't think it's going to magically disappear. Okay. So if you have an allergy, you probably still have it, but you may find that you may be able to eat foods you didn't think you could eat if you eat them organic, free range, wild caught, and that kind of stuff. So all your good fats, your avocado, your chia seeds, your coconut oil, your coconut spreads, coconut milk, and you can use a whole fat. I like the fat stuff. Remember, it's not the sugar that makes you fat. It's the sugar that makes you fat. Your flaxseed oil, your ghee or clarified butter, grapeseed oil, your hyoleic safflower oil. That means it's been expeller pressed and organic. Your extra virgin olive oil, your sesame oil, some fresh nut spreads, and you can have more seeds than nuts on this particular program, but afterwards they're okay. And yogurt. If you want to do a spoonful of yogurt for the good bacteria, I'm good with that as long as it's like a Greek yogurt that doesn't have any sugar in it. So your plate basically looks like this during the challenge. You're going to have mostly veggies, a little bit of protein, and your miscellaneous will be some of your carbohydrates and your fats. So let's talk about macros. I mean, everybody hears the word macro, and so a funny story: when I was in school, when I was in chiropractic school, we had to do microbiology, and one of the guys, bless his heart, he was, he just bless his heart. He was like, had to take all these things and scrape these little tiny things and put them into petri dishes, and there were different organisms we had to grow. We had to go out and touch things in the hallway and doorknobs and then scrape our fingers and put that in there. Well, whenever he would take something to put into the petri dish, he'd have like almost a shovelful in there. And I'm like, that it's supposed to be micro, meaning really tiny. You don't need that much. So macro means really big. So what are macros? Well, in this case, we talk about macros as macronutrients. So we have micronutrients, which will be your minerals, but your macronutrients, so your minerals and vitamins, and your macronutrients are your carbohydrates, your proteins, and your fats. So they're made of 3 components, and we hear what carbohydrates, fats, and proteins are all the time. So let's kind of delve into that a little bit. So carbohydrates, we have 2 types. We have a complex and a simple. This is why I call this back to school, because I'm going to test you on this. Not really, I'm just kidding. So a simple carbohydrate has, so 1 gram of carbohydrate equals 4 calories. And that's energy food, starch and sugar. It's usually the least expensive. And when we're talking about simple, that's more what we're talking about: plentiful and available. They're easily digested, widely distributed in plant food. And if you see the little little picture over here, this shows what the what a carbohydrate looks like in the chain of carbohydrates, hydrogens, and oxygens. And it's big and bulky. So when we eat them, our body can't manage that big bulk, so it has to break it down into nice, neat little packages that we call fat. So kind of macronutrients, it's kind of a simple guide, so you can kind of have a picture of what carbohydrates look like and how some of the carbohydrates cross over to proteins, and we call those incomplete proteins because they don't have all the essential amino acids we need. And then you can see how the fats and the proteins kind of cross over as well. So a complex carbohydrate was really where I want you to kind of spend your energy eating. Those are nutrient rich and fiber dense. You'll hear me say that all the time. If you have to chew it for a while to get it down, that means it's good for you. The quicker it dissolves in your mouth, the simpler the carbohydrate it is. So when they're complex, they have more fiber, they have more phytonutrients, and they really supply the body with what it needs. And for instance, if you're hungry, and I always say this, if you eat, you're hungry and you grab a candy bar, which I know none of you do, but if you eat a candy bar, then your body's going to say, hey, you didn't really feed me. I'm still hungry. I want more. So you think, oh, I must have another candy bar. And you keep feeding yourself that, and your body's like, hey, I'm still hungry. What, you're not feeding me. But if you would eat, a head of broccoli and a salad and maybe some blueberries, you wouldn't be hungry because you gave your body the foods that were nutrient rich and fiber dense. Your body knows what it needs. So we're the ones that kind of spoil it and tease it. And remember, we've talked about sugar being just like cocaine on the brain. So there are simple sugars, and there's refined sugar and flour. So there's no doubt in my mind that don't know what these are. And these are all the foods that are always the pretty colors. They stay on the shelves forever. They're the cheapest foods, of course. So when we get the cheapest food, that's why people think, oh, well, it's too expensive for me to eat good food. But it's not really too expensive. The cheaper food, you have to eat more of it. You have to eat less of the more expensive food. And then you have the cost of your metformin, your drugs for diabetes, your drugs for hypertension, and then your drugs for metabolic syndrome. So it's not really cheaper in the long run. So your brain only needs 20 grams of carbohydrates per day to function normally. 20 grams. The average American consumes 295 grams of carbohydrates per day. That's almost 1,200 calories of basically sugar. Now, if you're eating 295 grams of broccoli, I don't know how you're doing it, because you would be, on the toilet all the time. You would have probably some good gastric distress as well. So I'm imagining that when we're talking about this average American consuming 295 grams of carbohydrates, it's the foods that are high in white sugar and white flour. So when you look at the picture of the brain over here, so the brain has a lot of functions. And when we take in sugar, when the insulin comes into that prefrontal cortex, the hypothalamus, which is kind of our air traffic controller for our brain, tells the muscle, oh, okay, here's some glycogen, and you can take up some of this glucose for energy. But if you're sitting on your butt all day long in front of a computer screen, you are not using that much energy. And if you take in food, if you take in, pleasure food, that stimulates the brain. But then the liver is responsible for managing all that sugar. So the liver can make it or break it down, and it has to break it down. So we have lipogenesis, which makes it, and we have lipolysis, which breaks it down. And it has to break it down into little packages so it can be carried through the bloodstream. So it's got a lot of work to do. And if we don't have enough carbohydrates, your liver will make them in the form of ketones. We'll get on with that down the road here. So fats is the next type of macronutrient. 3 types. We have saturated, unsaturated, and trans fats. 1 gram of fat equals 9 calories. It's almost double the calories, well, more than double the calories of a carbohydrate and a protein. So saturated fat is, they're good energy food. They support your cell growth. They protect your organs. It keeps you warm in the winter. In the summer, we don't need it here. Helps you absorb nutrients, and it produces very important hormones. And if you look at the saturated picture and then you look at the molecules of the unsaturated, you see how they're all nice and neat and tidy. But when you look down at the trans fat, what the problem is we've taken made it unnatural, meaning it's like taking your arm off and your leg off and switching them. So putting your right leg where your right arm should be and your right arm where your leg should be. It's not anything the way it's supposed to. And so the food industry likes that because they take a lot of energy to, they can take a high boiling point. They last a long time on a shelf. So we don't really want to put that in our body because, our body temperature gets up 98.6 or maybe 99 at the most. If you're out in the sun and you're working without a fever, we're never going to get up to that, 212, 600 degrees or whatever that it takes to burn that off. So that's why we have those little lumpy things on the side of our legs, because we store that there. So here's some examples of saturated fats. It's going to be your cheeses, your fish, your eggs, your meats. Another thing is it's usually solid at room temperature. Unsaturated fats, those are your nuts, your seeds, your olive oils, some of your salmon, your avocado, your sesame seeds, your Brazil nuts, your pecans, and then trans fat examples. I mean, it's what we cook our fast food in. And, it lasts a long time. You can put it at high temperatures and, it pretty much cooks the daylights out of the food anyway. And most of the food they dip it in is white flour. Look at a donut. I mean, a donut is not just baked. They drop it in fat and fry them basically. So these are the foods we don't want. These are the foods that are hard to get out of our system. So we don't want to make our diet of that. Proteins, there are two types. We have plant-based and animal-based. 1 gram of protein of either is 4 calories. And proteins are important because it helps us to build and repair our muscles, our tissues. It makes enzymes and hormones. It's really the building block of our bones. Also builds muscle, cartilage, skin, and blood. And it's a component of every cell. So your amino acid structure. So for us, for humans, and I'll talk about, from between men and women definitely need to eat their proteins earlier. Our metabolisms are just a lot slower, but at night we want those proteins available for our body to repair itself. And we need those amino acids, which are the building blocks of our muscle. So we want to have our proteins that are good. And I've done a lot of playing around with my own diet, and I found that I just do feel better on a plant-based. I'm not vegan. I do eat some animal. If I do eat animal, it's, free-range eggs that are eating, grasses and bugs, not being fed grains. If I'm eating, beef, it's wild caught. It's not wild caught. Grass-fed, grass-finished. If it's fish, it's wild caught. Chickens that are free-range as well. And you can taste the difference. Protein examples. So, to me, that just looks yummy. I could eat all of that. Not at one time, maybe. So when I say, we have amino acids, when I said that earlier about we had that overlap where we had like beans and lentils, and those do have protein in them, but they're considered incomplete proteins. So we have essential amino acids. Those are obtained from our nutrition. And then we have non-essential, amino acids that are synthesized by our body. Well, the essential amino acids come from meat. We don't get those from vegetables. And so we have to be able to have them in there. So for myself, Standard Process has something called ProtoFood, and that's those 8 or 9 amino acids that essentially amino acids that we need. So I always, if I'm going to have a vegan day, which I do, not by plan, but it just kind of happens. I kind of eat what I feel like that day. I'll throw in a couple ProtoFoods so I make sure I maximize my essential amino acids. So, this is a no-brainer. Common sources of protein. So your lean chicken, and I don't even go lean anymore. With doing a keto style diet, I want some of the good fat. All the research points in this direction. I am careful with using the saturated fat or the animal fats. I do tend to eat a little bit more plant-based protein, but that doesn't mean you can't have some. So your eggs, your cheese, I never get a low fat anymore. I get the full fat, but I don't eat that much cheese. I'm not a big fan of tofu, but it's fine to eat it. Just make sure it's not genetically modified. Soy yogurt, I don't do much soy at all, just because it's one of the highest genetically modified foods. I don't do any low-fat milk. I do the organic whipping cream. I do a lot of nut milks. Yogurt, I kind of ebb and flow in that. I may have a spoonful here and there, just for the good probiotics. Beans, peas, and lentils, you can have them. I'm not a super big fan. I mean, they're high in carbohydrates, so I tend to stay away from them. Peanut butter, nuts or seeds. So we do a lot of nuts and seeds in the house. So that's another way to get a little bit of good fat and protein. So what should your macros look like? So this is kind of what I recommend for most patients. So if you've never done any kind of macro or keto style, this is not ketogenic. Ketogenic means you're going to do 20 grams of protein a day. 20 grams of carbohydrates a day. That's very challenging to do. So I recommend, if you've never done anything like this, your carbohydrates at 100 grams or less. Your protein should be half your desired body weight in grams. So my body weight is 130. I try to maintain 130. So I eat about 55 to 65 grams of protein a day, combination of plant-based and animal-based. My fat, whatever my desired body weight is, that's my grams of fat. So I eat about 130 grams of fat in a day. So if you weigh more, if you say you weigh 200 pounds, but you want to be 150, you don't want to eat 100 grams of protein. You want to eat 75 grams, so half of that. And I kind of do it, I always do it on the low side and then where I want it. So I would say if you wanted to be 150, then it should be 65 to 75 grams of protein. The high protein is not really, if it still raises your blood sugar and still can be converted to fat. So we want to give you enough that you need to rebuild your body and maintain muscle and bone and ligament and tendon and cartilage, but we don't want to make you fat. Then your fat, your desired body weight. So I eat 130 grams of fat per day. So if you wanted to be 150, you'd eat 150 grams of fat per day. And I'm telling you that if you add the macros up, it would equal whatever your needed total carbohydrates for the day. I just don't even look at that anymore. I just look at the grams of everything. So here's how it looks. I eat 50 to 75. I personally eat 50 to 75 grams of carbohydrates a day, which is about 200 to 300 calories. Remember, one carbohydrate gram is 4 calories. So I multiply that. So that's 200 to 300 calories. My protein's between 55 and 65 grams. So that's 220 to 260 calories. And my fat is 130 grams. That's about 1170. So my total caloric consumption for the day is between 1590 and 1730. And I'm not hungry. I can maintain my body weight easily. My body fat is, great. And I didn't say this on Monday when last week. I meant to tell you, but you're welcome to come up to the Eustis office if you're in the program, if you're doing the class, if you're doing the supplementation. You are welcome to come up and get on our InBody. If you're just auditing the class and just learning and you want to come do it, we charge $45 to get on the scale. It's a $10,000 scale, but it will give you everything that's going on inside of your body, what your fat is, what your water is, what your muscle is, what your bones are, your percentage of body fat, your what your dry bone mass is, and then it also gives you visceral fat. So that's that belly fat that's so dangerous. So it's a really good starting point. So sometimes I have patients do it at the end of the 10-day. That way they have a place to, they know where they are and know where they need to be. Because a lot of times we get done and we're like, oh, wow, I'm done and I can go back to eating normally. No, we need to change your food thought process. So energy balance, number of calories taken in the body as food versus number of caloric expenditure. This is one way we look at things, energy or caloric balance. So if you eat the same as you put out, then you don't gain weight. If you eat more calories than you expend, then you put on weight. If you eat less calories than consume, then you lose weight. So when we look at the energy of calories in, you can see that an apple is mostly carbohydrate, a little bit of protein, tiny bit of fat, and then other nutrients. And I'm not saying that apple's bad, but you can see that it has 193 grams of, no, it doesn't have 193 grams of, it has probably about 25 grams of carbohydrates, 26. The grilled salmon will have no carbohydrates. So that would be something we want to eat. It's got mostly protein and fat. The white bread has a little bit of protein, a little bit of fat, and a lot of carbohydrates. So we would kind of want to stay away from that kind of food. So I should have put a broccoli or something up there. But what I explain to patients is that a head of broccoli has about 6 grams of carbohydrates. An apple has about 26 grams or 20 grams of carbohydrates. So if I'm going to have 50 to 75 grams of carbohydrates a day, I'm going to lean more toward the vegetables than I am the fruit. And remember, the fruit, you don't get anything more from the fruit than you do the vegetables other than the sugar. And the sugar is fructose, and the liver has to process that. So, I mean, I've seen people that are like, they're trying to do the right thing, but they're eating a ton of fruit and they don't know why they don't lose weight. And this is why. They're not really making any changes. So when we look at the thermic effect of everything, you can see that the salmon really burns the most, it takes the most calories to really use the metabolism to burn it. So, your protein is going to be a little bit harder. Your fat is going to be harder to burn, or takes more energy to burn that thermic effect. So we want to get those numbers in a good range when we look at that. So your basal metabolic rate is the calories you need in a day to maintain. And I have a whole formula for that, but if you come in and do the InBody, it'll calculate it for you. So from all the patients, when I hear you talk, I look at the food pyramid during the summer, and this is what I hear. That the base of the triangle, it's really upside down. We have alcohol, we have to have our hangover food, which there's not many Burger Kings around, so we'll leave it to McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, and Wendy's. And then you have a salad every second week, so that you have, it gives your conscious thinking that you're doing the right thing for your, so you can have those other things. So this is not what we want. And then, this is not even any better. This is actually the food guide that the that the government puts out. So, it's totally the opposite. So they're loading us up with a bunch of carbohydrates, with refined flour and sugar, a little bit of vegetables, only 3 servings a day of vegetables, and 2 servings of fruit. But you can have 6 servings of your carbohydrates for your refined white flour and sugar. So these are coming from our farmers and things like that. So, people are not working for us. They're, the government is subsidizing a lot of these foods. So that's a whole nother class. So you can see how this is all the USDA food triangles or food pyramids over the years, and how they've changed. And basically mine is, don't buy junk food. If you're fat, try to eat less carbohydrate, more fat, and exercise. Just exercise. So this is more what I kind of do for me. We drink a lot of water, some mineral waters, a lot of veggies, some meat and fish, a little bit of fruits and nuts and oils, and of course spices. So what is a diet? Diet is not, I don't really like to say that I'm even on a diet. I just have, a diet is anything you eat. So whatever your lifestyle of food is. So there's no one size fits all nutrition program. You can choose a diet that optimizes your needs. The quality of the food is the most important. You want to reduce and remove refined and over-processed low-nutrient foods. You want proper hydration. That's the key for healthy living and overall health. Your muscles are 75% water. And it's just shocking to me to watch how little people drink, or when they do drink, they're drinking at dinner to wash their food down because they're too lazy to chew it. So if that picture of the ice cream cone with all that on it is you. Now, I'm not saying you can't have pizza. We have pizza on Sunday nights, but we do have our own little tiny pizza. If I'm hungry, she cuts my 3 pieces into 4, so I feel like I'm getting more. But it's, a gluten-free pizza or a cauliflower crust, and we put fresh mozzarella. We put organic pizza sauce on it. We add our own veggies and olives and onions and spinach and that kind of stuff. So the other thing that I want to get into this whole thing is that we have to really get into exercise. The standard of longevity is a minimum of 3.5 hours a week. That's 30 tiny minutes a day. People are sitting more than hours and hours in front of the TV. 30 minutes minimum. I would say an hour a day, because you sit more than you do anything. So creating a regular exercise habit, invest in instruction, get a trainer, they not only will they help you, teach you how to strengthen your muscles or protect your joints, but they'll keep you accountable. Because if you're paying somebody to do that, you're going to show up. When I had my personal training company, if my clients didn't show up, I charged them double, because then they knew it. So if they didn't show up, they knew they were going to get charged double, because it's not that I wanted them not to show up. I wanted them to show up. So I had to hit them in the pocket. Certain exercises will be very good for your spine, and some will be harmful. So sometimes a trainer is helpful for that. An exercise professional is your best choice. You can find somebody at the gym or a referral from a friend. If you need somebody, you talk to Dr. Cooper or I. We can certainly help you with that. So exercise is a miracle drug. You take it often, you'll live long, healthy lives. You'll have lower medical costs, better sleep, productive work days, mood enhancement, decreased risk of almost any chronic disease. Any chronic disease. That's just mind-boggling. It works for everyone, fewer, no side effects. Every dose is 100% effective, even small ones. It's the most powerful, readily available drug, and it's free. It doesn't cost you to go anything out and take a walk. It doesn't cost anything for you to lay down in your living room and do sit-ups or planks or something like that, or get a stationary bike and park it in front of the TV while you watch TV, or better yet, hook the TV up to the bike so you can't watch TV unless the bike is moving. So let's talk about a ketogenic diet. For me, I like to call it, I call myself a ketotarian, because I do mostly plant-based. And I don't really go into ketosis. It's very hard. And if you want to do that, I can guide you through that, but I want to do it something that's a lifelong lifestyle change for you. So they have very similar biological outcomes of calorie restriction and intermittent fasting. We'll talk about both, but you can have butter. That's amazing. I'm not telling you to eat 2 sticks a day, but you can have butter. So scientists say that the metformin, which is what people are getting for diabetes nowadays, interferes with the normal aging process called glycation. So does ketogenic diet. So do we need to take medication, or can we modify our diet? But I do have patients, and I will say, and it drives me absolutely crazy. Well, I'll just take more metformin so I can eat that, and that just blows my mind. Glucose combines with proteins and other important molecules and that gum up your normal workings. Metformin findings is particularly striking because people who have diabetes, even if it's well controlled, typically have somewhat shorter lifespans than their healthy counterparts. Ketosis and lower blood sugar. Well, they did a study, and this was in Wales, and they reported that patients with type 2 diabetes who took the drug metformin lived an average of 50% longer than a group of healthy people who did not suffer from metabolic disorder, but were similar in nearly all respects. Well, that sounds great, but when I dug in deeper, we can make chocolate, a longevity, food, or wine, a longevity food. Resveratrol in wine is an amazing longevity food, but you have to drink 1,000 bottles a day. That's just not possible. So we eat foods that have that in there. We take supplementation. So what is a ketogenic diet? Ketogenic diet, or keto for short, it's a low carb, high fat diet that offers many, many health benefits. Studies show that this type of diet can help you lose weight and improve your health. It's also very good for benefits against diabetes, cancer, epilepsy, and Alzheimer's disease. It was actually discovered, or they utilized a ketogenic type diet for kids with epilepsy early in the day when they found that it worked so well, because the carbohydrates in the brain cause inflammation, and they saw that the epilepsy was like an inflammation of the brain. So it drastically reduces your carbohydrate intake and replaces it with fat. Remember, it's not the fat that makes you fat, it's the sugar that makes you fat. This reduction in the carbs makes your body go into a metabolic state called ketosis. You're not going to do that, but if you lower your carbohydrates, we're doing more of a low carbohydrate, high fat. Your body becomes incredibly efficient at burning fat for energy, turning fat into ketones in the liver, which can supply energy for the brain, and it can cause massive reductions in blood sugar and insulin levels. So do we really need to take metformin? And I did this in particular for a couple of my patients who I know are on metformin or being stalked by their doctors to be on metformin. So there's side effects to metformin. And this is a very classic drug that is given for type 2 diabetic. If you're a type 2 diabetic, it's caused by you, and you can fix it. But it actually increases insulin sensitivity. It decreases gluconeogenesis. You, like 75% of the patients have diarrhea, heartburn, stomach cramps, and lactic acidosis. And that's a big black box warning. So the side effects are way too hard on you. And all the patients I've known that have been on metformin have drastic diarrhea. I mean, it's like, and I don't want to be crass, but don't trust a fart. That's what they say is, you think if it, it's a big mistake going to happen. So, those are big side effects. So no metformin for me. So I'd rather kind of shift my eating around. So, and I find this, I've been doing it for almost 3 years now. When I started kind of getting more serious about my competing. Love it. I don't get hungry when I'm working out. I don't get hungry on a long ride. I drink plenty of liquid, and I don't really eat anything on a ride. But I see my fellow cyclists eating bananas and all these sweet bars, and it really just kind of throws their insulin up, and then it crashes and burns. So I'm more what I call fat adapted, and that's what I would it's a better form of fuel for you to run. That's what I kind of trying to push you toward, be more fat adapted. So we have a couple type of ketogenic diets. We have a standard one, which is 20 to 50 grams of net carbs per day. As more of a targeted, where it's 25 to 50 grams or less. And then you can do that 30 minutes or an hour before your exercise. And that's what athletes kind of do. And then the cyclic, where you eat low carb for several days, then a couple of days of eating high carb. So, I mean, as a bodybuilder back in the day, if I had known then what I know now, my competition would have been totally different, but we didn't know. We were learning. So these are all things, as I learn better, I do better. So that's why I teach you. So the standard ketogenic diet is a very low carb, moderate protein, and high fat diet. It typically contains 75% fat, 20% protein, and 5% carbs. That's really, 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 really hard to do, I will tell you. So we're going to talk about doing, eating less protein, 50 to 100 grams for women, depending on your weight, and exercise, 70 to 120 for men. You don't need any more than that. The rest is going to increase your insulin. You eat more fat, your good avocados, your egg yolks, your homemade mayo. Remember, mayo is just eggs and oil mixed together. Homemade dressings, hollandaise, olives, organic heavy whipping cream, grass-fed butter on vegetables and meat. And that what happens is when you eat the fat, you're satiated. You don't get hungry, because all the foods that are low fat on the shelves taste like crap because there's no fat in them. So they had to put sugar in them to make them taste good. And that started in about the 70s. So, and we learned that. So we kind of banned all fat, and now we're finding out, oops, we're wrong. So this is why I teach you this. So we want to cut the carbs. If you don't want to go into ketosis, 30 to 50 carbs. Dr. Westerman and Duke recommended a stricter 20 total carbs for people with severe insulin resistance. So if you have some of those physical problems or chronic disease problems, let's talk to me first before you do anything. Proportion distortion, most of my patients freak out. They're never doing enough fat, but when your portions get too big, you'll most likely exceed your protein requirements. So you want to eat more fat, which if you're eating enough fat, you don't get hungry, and you have plenty to burn. So when we eat enough fat, we need that for our skin and for our organs and for protection and for our brain. And if we don't eat enough fat, then we hold on to all the fat. So if you're trying to lose fat, when you're trying to lose weight, which is fat weight, then your body is holding on to it because it thinks you're in a famine. So that's why we want to kind of get that fat up. So eat more intuitively. Sit down and pay attention to the flavor of the food. Relax, sleep. Part of losing weight is about balancing your hormones, getting your cortisol and your leptin and your ghrelin, all in order. Those are all the things that tell your body burn fat, save fat, burn sugar, use sugar, hold sugar, put it in the cell, put it in the muscle. Give it time. It takes about 2 to 3 weeks for that high fat, low carb eating to get into that keto zone. So if you do it for a week and then you step off and you do, 6 quarts of ice cream and 5 bags of M&Ms and 20 bags of cookies, it's not going to work for you. So there's plenty of information. There's Keto Clarity. That's a good book. Dietdoctor.com, drberg.com has plenty of Dr. Google. And I found this cartoon because I get patients all the time. Well, I was looking at the internet. I'd recommend real doctors. I'd stay away from getting a second opinion from Dr. Google. So be mindful of that. If you have a question, ask Dr. Cooper or I. Or if you ask Tina or Marianne, if they don't know the answer, they hear us talk enough. If they don't know the answer, they'll ask. So this would be your grocery list. I mean, it's not so hard. I'm not a big bacon fan, unless you can get it without sodium nitrate in there. But you have other choices. There's plenty of things to look at. So you know, be wary of your sausages and some of your pepperonis and jerky and things like that, and bacon. But all the other stuff is great. And I mean, you've got plenty to pick from. I mean, there's nothing on there that I won't eat. I don't see anything I won't eat. So, you know, this is what you take to the store with you, and this is what you're going to buy. You're going to basically be buying the outside of the supermarket. You're not going to go up and down the aisles unless you're picking up a can of fish or something like that. So I use some supplementation to support ketosis, beets, choline, kidney support, minerals, creatine, whey. Your Veggie Pro vanilla and chocolate have for serving sizes about 20 grams. I don't do a level scoop, I do a heavy scoop. So it gives me about 22 to 25 grams of protein in that. Sometimes I'll throw a little nut powder in there. Then my almond milk will have a couple grams of protein. So I can pretty much make a protein shake that'll have almost 40 grams of protein in it. So I can pretty much get to my maximum protein almost just in my shake. And I like to say I'm not old. I've just been young for a very long time. Those who think they have no time for healthy eating will sooner or later have to find time for illness. So let's talk about blueberries for a second here. So he sent out an email to me this morning, or I talked to him last Thursday. I swung by there to pick them up. I thought I was getting 2 5-pound boxes, but they're 2 25-pound boxes. And I was like, I'm never going to eat all these, but trust me, you'll eat all of them. It'll last you the rest of the year. But they're organic frozen blueberries, a 20-pound box, and it comes in a big bag inside that box. So I just put them into smaller bags, smaller containers in the freezer, and I was generous and gave some away. But he's given a frozen 2021 as a promo code to save you money on it. So definitely worth it. I mean, I can't speak highly enough about it. So here's some research. So I thought, well, you know, I'm telling you to eat blueberries, but why? So this was published July 2019, and it was in the Advanced Nutrition March 2020. And it was a recent research on the health benefits of blueberries and their anthocyanins. So blueberries contain a large amount of phytochemicals, very abundant in the anthocyanin pigments, which is that blue color. Various phytochemicals make the greatest impact on the blueberry health, its functionality. Epidemiological studies associate regular moderate intake of blueberries, reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease, death, type 2 diabetes with improved weight maintenance and neuroprotection, protection of the brain and your nervous system. And they're saying, like a third of a cup a day or a handful a day. So if you get a bag of those or a box of those 25 pounds, you could have a handful a day for the rest of the year. So these findings are supported by biomarker-based evidence from human clinical studies. Among the more important health benefits of blueberries are their anti-inflammatory and antioxidant actions and their beneficial effects on vascular and glucoregulatory function. So balancing your blood sugar. It does not raise your blood sugar like you would if you ate a banana. The blueberry phytochemicals may affect gastrointestinal microflora and contribute to host health. You hear me say that all the time, that our large intestine is our immune system. And people are putting probiotics in, which is great, but if you don't feed the probiotics, they die, and the good guys die, and you have to keep putting them in. So feeding foods like a blueberry, the organic blueberry, those rich in phytochemicals, will help to feed the good bacteria. And these aspects have implications in degenerative diseases as well as the aging process. So none of us are spring chickens, and I'd like to maintain my spring chickenness as much as possible. So my favorite way, personal favorite, is I take the frozen organic blueberries, I put them in a dish. I do not let them thaw. I take organic whipping cream and pour them over top, and maybe a tiny bit of, you could grate a little bit dark chocolate on it. And if you feel like you need it sweeter, a little pinch of monk fruit. And when you pour the organic whipping cream over it, it freezes, and it's like this most wonderful decadent treat. I've served it at desserts for dessert when we have company, and they know it's my special organic blueberry stockpile. So It's, you know, they know they're privileged to have a bite of those. But these blueberries, no lie, are sometimes bigger than your thumbnail. They're humongous. So very, very, if you haven't gotten it, split it with somebody and spread it out throughout the family. So that's the finale for today. We'll have our last class will be on Wednesday, same time, same station. If you can't be there on Wednesday, I will record it and I'll post it on YouTube and I'll send a link out the next morning. So keep on your plan. If you have a chance to get into the office and get on the scale to do the in-body measurement, I highly recommend that. I only have it in Eustis. Just call up and we'll get you in there. It only takes a few minutes. And then we'll print out a nice place for you, paper for you, and it also goes to an app on your phone. All right, so I will see you on Wednesday, same time and same station. Have a great evening.